What is the ceiling of this team? How much noise can they make in the playoffs?
I think their ceiling is until they run into Phoenix or Golden State.
Okay.
I think we need to see more before you can put them in the conversation I forget, a random regular season game last night. Obviously, the Warriors didn't have Draymond, and Clay's just getting his legs underneath them. I think that as much as we were just praising their depth, I think that those two teams have proven it in May and June, and have only, Phoenix has only gotten better from last year. And obviously the Warriors, with how they're playing, and we've talked a ton about their depth and with Clay back and everything like that. I think those two are in a class by themselves, but I think they're in the Utah conversation.
Okay. I like this.
If everything clicks
and they get the right matchups,
who knows? I mean, they've got a star. I also think, I wanted to ask you about this. I know we've talked about him a bit on the show recently, but about Desmond Bane in particular. And we may or may not, I don't want to jinx anything, but we may or may not be having him on the show at some point. But what do you think as a shooter, what do you think makes him good? And also, we'll get into this when he comes on, but how did this guy drop? Because he does seem like he has every single sort of tangible you want in a two guard, and he went 29th in the draft. I mean, it's
did he go 29th or 30th?
30th.
Yeah. 29 teams passed him.
Yeah.
Well, and what's wild about that draft, if you look back at that draft right now, and again, this is super early in these guys' career, but if you look back at his draft, he's a top 5 or 6 player in that draft, easy. And he was at 30. I think this is a point I wanted to bring up about Memphis and team building, is there's challenges involved in building small market teams. I think Sam Presti probably did a better job than anyone in recent memory of building a championship level team in an extremely small market. And how did he do that? He did it through the draft. You have to hit on some picks. He did it through some trades. You have to trade for some good role players. And he did it through being smart with all of his exceptions. Because eventually, Ja's going to get a max deal. Desmond will get an extension. All their young guys will end up getting paid.
Jaren already got paid.
Yeah, and they're not going to have the cap space to then go out and sign a free agent. They're going to have to be smart with their exceptions. And I think about what the Grizzlies have done. They landed with 2 top 5 picks in their down years. Those bridge years in between the grit and grind era and this current makeup of the Grizzlies, and they hit on those picks. They hit with Jaren Jackson. They hit with Ja. They hit late in the draft with Desmond Bane. I think about a guy like DeAnthony Melton, who's been really good for them. He was in basically a throwaway trade with Josh Jackson. He was included in the trade. He ends up signing on a 3-year deal with them.
Did you mention Brooks? Because they definitely hit with Brooks.
They hit with Brooks. Tyus Jones, they signed with the mid-level exception. So if you're a small market, I think the Grizzlies have done this as good as anybody can do in that market. They built what I would consider to be a Western Conference, maybe championship level contender. I didn't think it was going to happen this year, but certainly in the future, they built a team that can compete for Western Conference championships and championships in the next few years by being smart and doing it the right way.
I have their from our friends at FanDuel. I have their odds as of right now, as of January 12th. They're plus 2,400 to win the West, plus 4,200 to win the championship. Where do you think, you asked me what I thought their ceiling was. Where do you think, does that make sense to you? And what do you see as of January 2022 in terms of where they can go?
I think you nailed it. I think that, to me, the favorites in the West are still the Phoenix Suns and the Golden State Warriors. The next tier is the Jazz and the Grizzlies are in that next tier for sure. And I do think because Luka is Luka, I think maybe Dallas could bump into that next tier where if things go right, they get the right matchup, they add a piece. They're playing really well right now. I should add that, a number 1 defense in the league over the last 15 games. They could be a team, and then everybody else is just uncertainty. whether it's the Lakers, the Clippers, do they get Kawhi back? How is Paul George's health? Yeah, PG's health. Of course, we know about the injuries in Denver. But I think they're in that second tier. And I wouldn't surprise me if they made the conference finals. It also wouldn't surprise me if they ended up somehow playing in the NBA finals. This team, there's a fearlessness, there's a confidence, I hate to say it, there's a little bit of hashtag heat culture in the Memphis Grizzlies. Yeah, there is.
So I was going to ask you about this. This has been a thing. You could tell, you could see it watching them play. But there's been a thing that other guys have talked about how this team, and we're going to talk about it, with Desmond or with whoever we have on from the team, how they talk a lot of shit and they're just kind of, I was going to ask about the word fearlessness because they just don't seem to give a fuck. No one in the NBA is scared of anyone else, but they seem to relish going in and playing these big name guys and kind of, beating them up a little bit. And do you think that is real? And that helps them, or this is really just like, this is a extremely skilled team that happens to be hitting at the right time?
Look, they've got great basketball players. They've got really good players, and they've got skilled players, and they've got good defenders. Good teams take on the identity of their best players. And if you were to ask me how I would describe Ja Morant in one word, fearless. That's the first thing that comes to my mind. Fearless.